work for Dr. Hiles. I have worked for Dr. Hiles. It'll be 15 years this coming June. I will have completed my 15th year in June of this year. I went on staff part-time at the church when I was 19 and then joined the staff on a full-time basis when I was 21. Originally, I worked with the buses, still do, of course. Originally, I worked with the C and D buses at our church, and then a year or so later, Brother Hiles asked me to also work with the C and D Sunday School of our church. So I was, at that time, overseeing the C buses and the D buses and the C Sunday School and the D Sunday School. And a year or so later, then he asked me if I would oversee the B buses and the B Sunday School. And so now I have 109 bus routes, the B, C, and D buses, and the B Sunday School and the C Sunday School and the D Sunday School. And those three Sunday schools together probably average about 5,000 a Sunday in those three Sunday schools. I work with 17 superintendents and 350 Sunday school teachers and workers. And then a few years passed and we started our Bus Kids School, City Baptist School. Brother Hiles asked me to, after it had been in existence for a few years, Brother Hiles asked me if I would want to work with it and help him some with the school there. And so I also oversee our Bus Kids School. When I started working with it 5 years ago, we had about 60 students in the school. My assistant principal told me yesterday that as of yesterday, we have 182 students now in that school. Every single one of them bus kids from Chicago. Some of them work midnight shifts and pay their own school bills. Some of them, their bus captain pays the money for them. Many of them, we raise the money from different places to pay for them. But 182 in that school. And then I teach part-time at the college and work with pastor schools, some other things around the church. But anyway, I work for Brother Hiles in Hammond and basically work with the buses there. So this afternoon, Brother Beebe has asked me to speak on the subject of visitation. I used to call it how to get the most out of your time, how to get the most out of your visitation time. Brother Beebe heard it once and called it visitation that works. So you can call it whatever you want. But I'm going to talk to you about visitation, and we'll be here for about an hour on this session. Visitation that works. Every bus worker at some time or another has made the statement, or heard other bus workers make the statement, if I had more time, I could get more done on my bus route. I could accomplish more, get more people to come. I just need more time to get more done. Sometimes it's not that you need more time, it's that you need to know how to organize the time that you have. And so I have a way here that you can organize your time and get more accomplished on your bus route on Saturday. Let me see your hand. How many of you visit a bus route on a regular basis? Most every Saturday you visit a bus route. Let me see your hand. You're a bus worker. Good. Praise the Lord. And how many others work in a bus ministry? In some way you work in the bus route, but you don't necessarily visit on a regular basis on Saturday. Maybe you drive or something. Let me see your hand. The other folks who work in the bus ministry too. Good. All right. Let me make 3 or 4 statements of introduction before I get into my outline of how to organize your Saturday. Number 1, always start at the same time. Always start at the same time. Now, if your church has a meeting on Saturday morning where you attend that meeting and then go visiting, of course that's a natural for you. But other than that, you go at the same time every Saturday. Make yourself leave the house at the same time to go visiting every Saturday. Number 2, visit the same people at the same time every Saturday. Always plan to do it that way. If folks know you're coming, they'll plan on that, and they'll be home when you get there in many cases. Many times the family will have somewhere to go, but if they know you're coming at a particular time each week, they'll wait a few minutes until you get there and then go and take care of it. Now, I realize there's 1 or 2 families in every bus route. If they know when you're coming, they won't be there on purpose, so you have to plan to go by at a different time. But basically, visit the same person at the same time every week. Number 3, go straight to the bus route. Once you leave home, once you leave your church to go out visiting, don't stop by on a bunch of errands on the way there to get the car fixed and to do some shopping and things and to visit Aunt Susie and so forth. Just go straight to the bus route. And the last statement of introduction is this: visit the same route on Saturday that you're going to pick up on Sunday. In other words, in the same order. Visit the same way on Saturday in the same order that you plan to pick them up on Sunday. I guarantee you, you'll just get used to your bus route. You'll feel at ease on your bus route, and you'll accomplish more if you'll get used to driving the same route on Saturday that you drive on Sunday. It'll work better that way. Okay, now, with those statements, I want to take your Saturday, whatever amount of time you have to visit on your bus route on Saturday, and I want to take that time and divide that time into 3 segments of time. 3 segments of time on Saturday you'll use to visit your bus route. Now, it doesn't matter how much time you spend on your bus route. You may spend 2 hours, you may spend 3, you may spend 4, you may spend 5, you may spend 6, it doesn't matter. The bus routes I work with in Hammond, our bus captains last year averaged visiting 8.5 hours a Saturday on their bus route. That's not one time on a big day, that's average year-round. They average visiting 8.5 hours a Saturday on their bus route. It may not take that for your bus route. It may take you 2 hours to build your bus route. It may take you 4, it may take you 6, it doesn't matter to me. But whatever number of hours you spend on your bus route, you can take this outline I'm going to give you and get more out of the time that you have. I'm going to take the number 6, just because it's an easy number to work with, and I'm going to suppose you're visiting 6 hours on your bus route. And by the way, don't faint when I say that. There's nothing wrong with visiting 6 hours on a bus route. You can work 8 hours on Friday to make money. You can visit 4, 5, 6, 7 hours on a bus route on Saturday. Now, if you've only got 2 hours, go out there and hit it 2 hours. But if you've got 4, 5, 6 hours you could give to God, maybe you ought to consider doing that. But anyway, we'll take the number 6 and we'll work with that. We're going to suppose you're visiting 6 hours on your bus route, so I'm going to say, number 1, the first segment of time on Saturday should occupy 1/2 of your day. The first segment should occupy 1/2. During this first half of the day on Saturday, I want you to visit what I call your regulars. Visit your regulars. Now, when I say visit your regulars during the first half of your time on Saturday, I'm not talking about visiting those people who ride your bus on a regular basis on Sunday. I'm talking about, when I say visit your regulars, I mean visit the people on Saturday that you normally visit on a regular basis. In other words, you determine who your regulars are. Don't let the kids determine. You say, my regulars are those who ride regularly on Sunday. Well, that's going to limit you, because some kids aren't going to ride regularly, but you still need to visit them. So you visit your regulars on Saturday. Anyone that you normally visit, call those folks your regulars. We had a bus captain on one of our routes in Hammond, the name of Johnny Esposito, and Brother Johnny told me that he had a family on his route, and he visited the family every Saturday for 6 months. 6 straight months. He never missed visiting that family one time. The family had a little girl about 6 years of age, and they kept saying she couldn't come because she was not old enough. His route was about 25 miles one way from the church, and the mother didn't want the little girl to go that far to Sunday school. After 6 months of visiting that family every Saturday, finally, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, the mother finally agreed to let that little girl ride the bus. She came on the bus on Sunday morning, and sure enough, that very first Sunday morning she rode the bus, she got saved at our church. Brother Johnny went back the next Saturday to visit the family, and he found out that on Thanksgiving Day, the little girl, 6 years of age, who had been saved the Sunday before, left her house about 10:30 that morning to go upstairs in the apartment building where she lived to visit a friend. About 11:30 or 12 o'clock, Mom called the little friend's house to send her daughter home, and they said, oh, she left here some time ago. We haven't seen her in quite a while. The mother began to call other neighbors and search the building and couldn't find her, looked around the neighborhood, couldn't find her, called the police. The police spent the day looking for her. And about midnight, Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving evening, the janitor of the building finally admitted to what he had done, and he took them out in the alley behind the building and showed them where he had placed her little naked body in a plastic garbage bag and put it in a dumpster in the alley behind the building. He had killed her in the basement of the building earlier that day. Just 4 days after she was saved, she was murdered and went to heaven. But Brother Johnny said, I'll visit my regulars every Saturday, whether they ride the bus or not. I'll keep visiting my regulars until I get them to come. So you visit your regulars during the first half of the day. Now, while you visit your regulars, I'm going to give you several key words throughout my outline today. And one of the words I'm going to give you is this. While you visit your regulars on Saturday morning, you should make every visit brief. Now, that's a key word, and you want to remember that word or write that word down. Make every visit brief while you visit your regulars on Saturday morning. I'm talking about maybe 2 to 3 minutes to visit in the house of a regular rider. Someone who you visit every Saturday and who comes on your bus. About 2 to 3 minutes is all it takes to visit that family. Here's my little outline for making a visit in a regular house. First of all, you go through the door apologizing why you can't stay very long. I mean, the first thing I say when I walk through the door, I always say, Mrs. Smith, well, on our bus routes, it's not Mrs. Smith, it's Mrs. Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'd like to come by and see you and your family. I'm sorry, can't stay but a minute. Got a lot of folks to see today. We're in a big hurry. Got a lot of folks to visit today. And that way, if I go in the house And the first thing I say to that lady is, we want to come by and visit with you and your family for a while. We want to visit you. Well, she's thinking 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and if I stay less than that, then she's offended. Why didn't he stay very long? But if I go through the door and the first words out of my mouth is, sorry, can't stay but a moment. Well, how long's a moment? A moment's a moment, you know. How long's a moment? And so if I stay 2 or 3 minutes, that's longer than a moment was, and she's glad that I stayed a little while and visited with her family. So I go through the door. First thing I say is, sorry, can't stay but a moment. We have a lot of folks to visit. Then number 2, tell of your love for the children. Tell of your love for the children. This is an outline for visiting in the house of a regular family. Number 1, can't stay but a moment. Apologize why you can't stay but a moment. Number 2, tell of your love for the children. Mom needs to hear you say, I love your children every week. The first time Johnny comes home and something didn't go just right on that bus that Sunday, it's going to sure help out if Mom's heard you say over and over and over and over and over, I love your children, I love your children, we love your children, we love the children in this neighborhood, we sure love having your children on our bus. And by the way, it doesn't hurt little Johnny to hear you say that either every Saturday. Tell of your love for the children. Number 3, folksy with them for a few minutes. Now, you folks down here in this part of the country know what I mean when I say folksy with them for a few minutes. Just howdy-doody with them for a few minutes and find out how they're doing and ask them, did your dad get that new job this week? Or did your husband get that new job? Or did you win any ball games this week? Or how's your kittens doing? Or, just folksy with them for a few minutes and then get right to the point. Get right to the point. Tell them why you're there. Tell them what you're going to be doing on the bus the next day. If you got something special planned, be sure and tell them about that. Tell them what time the bus is coming, and then tell them you'll see them in the morning. Don't ask regular riders who usually come if they're coming or not. Don't ask them. Don't give them a chance to come up with a reason why they're not going to come. Just tell them, see you in the morning. Now, if you have someone who is on and off, then you might want to nail them down and make them commit themselves. You might want to say, you going to be on that bus in the morning? Yeah, we're coming. You said that last week. I mean, this time, are you coming? You promised me you're coming. I've got a couple of bus captains in my ministry that even take around a pledge card on Saturday. And at the top of the page, it says, I promise I'm riding the bus tomorrow. And he makes kids sign that pledge card on Saturday. The ones that he's worried about a little bit, he makes them sign it. And they feel committed to ride that bus the next morning because he made them sign their name. And he'll go to the door on Sunday morning. He'll knock on the door. Some little kid will come to the door and he'll say, well, I'm not going this week. He'll say, you're not? What? Look at this right here. You signed this card tomorrow. You said you'd come yesterday. And he gets them that way sometimes. But just get right down to the point and find out if they're coming or not. And then pray and leave. Pray and leave. Get right in there and get out. Always have prayer in every house, every Saturday with every family. Have a quick word of prayer and leave. Now, use that prayer. Use it to your advantage. Pray something like, now, Lord, you know that the devil's going to make things happen once in a while, and the devil's going to try to make these parents here and get upset with us. And don't you let the devil talk them into getting mad at our church, and don't you let the devil talk them into ever stopping their children from riding our bus and something like that. And use that prayer to help you in that home. And pray for things that family needs and so forth, and pray for them, and have a quick word of prayer, and then get out of there. 2 or 3 minutes. I was visiting one Saturday with one of my bus captains on the north side of Chicago, and we had made several visits. We came to a certain house. It was an apartment house, and he pointed upstairs. He said, Brother Ray, right up there is my favorite visit. He said, that's my favorite visit up there. I love to visit this family. Well, of course, I thought there must be 12, 15, 16 kids live in this house here, because every bus captain who has a favorite family, that family must have at least a dozen kids, And so we went upstairs, knocked on the door, and someone said, come in. So we walked in. I never sit down while I'm visiting a regular. Never. Never sit down in the house of a regular visit. Just absolutely ruled, don't sit down. Before I could stop him, this bus captain had already sit down on the couch. So I thought, okay, it's his favorite visit. I'm on his route. I'll sit down this one time. I sat down on the couch beside him, and 30 long, miserable minutes later, 30 minutes later, all he had talked about for 30 minutes to this man sitting on the couch and a man sitting in a chair over here, a middle-aged man here and an older man over here, all they had talked about for 30 minutes was the fact that these two fellas had gone down to Kentucky to go catfishing, and all they caught was one big old turtle. It took them 30 minutes to talk about catching that big old turtle. After 30 minutes, finally, the bus captain looked at this middle-aged man, and he said, are you going to ride the bus tomorrow? And the fellow said, nope, never do. He turned to the older man. He said, are you going to ride the bus tomorrow? He said, nope, never do. After 30 minutes, for the first time, he turned and looked at this little girl standing over in the corner behind the heater over there, and a big furnace-type heater there, and she was in the corner behind it, and for the first time he spoke to her. After 30 minutes, he said, "Are you going to ride the bus tomorrow, sweetheart?" She said, "Yep, always do." "Yep, always do." Man, I could do that walking down the sidewalk, just shout through the window and get that much out of them. Get in that house, get back out again, make that visit as quick as you can. Keep every visit brief. But now the next key word. While you make those visits brief, you must make every person feel loved. Now that's a key word. You're going to make every visit brief, but while you do it, you've got to make every person in that family, every individual in that family, feel loved. And by the way, I just gave you my next key word. The way you make them feel loved is by treating them like an individual. You've got to treat folks like an individual. They can't be one of the crowd. They've got to be an individual while you visit in their house on Saturday. You say, "Brother Ray, if I'm only going to be in that house for 2 or 3 minutes and maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 people live in one family, how am I going to treat everybody like an individual in that amount of time?" All right? The first thing you do is use their name. Use their name. You've got to use their name. They want to hear their name. Make sure you use everybody's name in every house every Saturday. I was preaching in Niagara Falls, Canada one night at a church, and after the service was over, I was at the back door shaking hands with folks, and a little boy about 5 years of age came by, blonde-headed fellow, you know, and he stuck his hand out like that, and I reached down to shake his hand, and I said, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" He jerked his hand back like that. He looked up at me, put his hands on his hips, and he said, "The name's not Buddy, it's Steve." You know, folks want their name used. You say, "But Brother Ray, I've got 200 prospects on my bus route. I've got 150 prospects on my bus route. I sign up 10, 15, 20 new kids a week." And by the way, you have to do that to keep your bus route growing. But I sign up new kids every week. I can't possibly remember all those names. The man who has the man who trusts his own memory has a memory that's trusted by no one. The man who trusts his own memory has a memory that's trusted by no one. Don't plan on remembering all the names. Right here, and here's the secret. The Wally Beebe's Archboard cards and Wally Beebe's Archcord system. Use this Archboard system. Here's what I say do. I don't say go to the door with this in your hand, like Brother Beebe said yesterday, you know, let's see who lives here at this house, you know. But take this visiting with you and leave it on the seat of the car. When you pull up in front of that house, you get your Archboard out and you look at the cards and let's see now. Okay, I'm at this house. This is a new house from last week. Let's see, Billy lives here, Johnny lives here, and Susie lives here, and Tommy lives here. So it's Billy, Johnny, Susie, and Tommy. Billy, Johnny, Susie, and Tommy. Brand new family, Billy, Johnny, Susie, and Tommy. Billy, Johnny, Susie, and Tommy. Just came last week for the first time. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Don't talk to me. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Don't speak to me while I'm walking up the sidewalk. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Don't interrupt me right now. Billy, Tommy, Susie, and Johnny. Hello there. So good to see you. Hello, Billy, Tommy, Susie, Johnny. Whew, made it. That's all you got to do. It's all you've got to do is look at their names on the Archboard card, remember their name until the time you get to that door. When you get to that door, call them by name, and if you remember to use their name again before you leave, great, but if you don't, it doesn't matter, because already Mom is thinking, this guy knows my kids by name. They only rode his bus one time, and he still remembers their name, and that little kid standing there thinking, wow, this guy loves me. He said last week on the bus he loved me, but I didn't know if he really meant it or not, but he sure did. He knew my name. I'm not a number on his bus. I'm a name on his bus. You say, Brother Ray, isn't that being a little hypocritical? No, you're not being hypocritical. You say, but Brother Ray, I can't guarantee those kids I loved them enough to remember their name, but you loved them enough to have enough character to write it down. It takes more love to have character than it takes to just remember something once in a while and get lucky and remember something. So write it down, use their name. How are you going to make them feel like an individual? Number one, use their name. Number two, talk about things that interest them. Find something that interests that person. Don't talk about things that... I have this rule with my bus captains. You cannot mention your problems once you leave the church to go visiting on Saturday. In the car on the way to the route, while you're on the route, while you're in the homes, on the way back home that afternoon after the bus route, you cannot mention any of your own problems. If you're sick, you can't mention it. If you've got an injury, you can't mention it. If you've got a bill you can't pay, you can't mention it. You have to keep your own problems at home and go out there and talk about things that interest those people that live on that bus route. Find something that interests them. I was visiting with a captain one Saturday, and he said, Brother Ray, this next house, I can't get it. He said, I can't make any progress. He said, I've tried and tried and tried and tried. I can't get anywhere with them. You need to help me. So we knocked on the door. A lady said, come in. We opened the door. She was sitting in a dining room table right inside the door there. And I mean, she was 6 feet from me. And I said, hello, how are you today? She didn't speak. She didn't grunt. She didn't look at me. She didn't yawn. She just sat there. I looked this way, and in the room in there was a man sitting on the couch watching a ball game. And I leaned over and I said, how you doing today? He didn't speak. Had his arms folded like this, looking at the ball game. He never looked up, never spoke to me. There was a teenage girl back there in the kitchen washing some dishes, so I started toward the kitchen. I pulled my coat off, started rolling my sleeves up, and I said, here, let me help you with those dishes. Well, just about the time I got there, she finished the last cup, thank you, Lord. And she finished washing the dishes, and she laughed real big, and she said, would you help me with those dishes? I said, well, of course I would have. And we laughed and talked a few minutes. So I went, after I talked to her, then I went back into the living room in there where the dad was. He was sitting on the couch. Let me show you. He was sitting on the couch just like this with his arms folded. You can't see me over there, can you? So now you can't see me over there, though, can you? But he was sitting like this with his arms folded like this watching the ball game. Well, I walked in. He was sitting there on the couch with his arms folded watching the ball game. And I said to him, who's playing? He said, I said, what's the score? And he said, I said, nice television set you got there. And he said, so I thought, well, maybe the guy can't hear me. Maybe I'm not close enough to him. So I walked over there right beside him. He was sitting on the couch. I stood right here. I said, who's playing? He said, I said, what's the score? And he said, I said, nice television. He said, so I thought, well, maybe the guy can't hear me. Maybe I'm not close enough to him. So I sat down on the couch beside him like this. He was sitting there. I was sitting here. He was sitting down like this with his head back watching the ball game. And I was sitting over here on this side, sitting up like this. And I said, who's winning? He said, I said, who's playing? He said, I thought, well, maybe the guy still can't hear me. You know, he's leaning back like this. I'm sitting up straight. I'm 6 inches above him. Maybe the guy can't see me. So I got down like this beside him. I put my arms on my chest like this. I looked over at him, and we were eyeball to eyeball, and I said, who's winning? And when I looked past him, I saw a fish tank over there on the wall. Big 30-gallon tank, all kind of tropical fish in it. So, when I looked across his face and saw that fish tank, I said, whose fish are those? He was sitting just like this, and he said, mine. And I said, gotcha. I found something that interested him. I said, man, you like fish? He said, do I like fish? I love them. He said, you like fish? I said, I love fish. Now, what he didn't know what I meant was I love them, battered and deep fried. But I said, man, I love fish. He said, let me show you my fish. And we got down on our hands and knees, and we crawled around that tank. He said, that one right there, his name's Charlie. He pecked on the glass. He said, come here, Charlie, I want you to meet somebody. And I said, oh, Charlie, you're a great... And boy, he showed me those fish. He had a great time. After we talked about the fish, I went back in the dining room where Mom was. And Mom had, over in the corner, another fish tank. But her fish tank didn't have any water in it. It had shredded up paper in the bottom of it. And she had a little rat, gerbil, in this thing. It was a pinto rat. And so I said, whose is this? And Mom said, mine. And she took this little plastic ball. I said, let me see him. And she took this little plastic ball, a clear plastic ball with holes cut in it, and took the top of it off and put him down inside there and put the top back on it, laid it on the floor. And that little gerbil would run in that ball, and make it roll around the floor like that. And I got down on my hands and knees and started chasing him around the room and under the table and so forth. And they were laughing and cutting up. Sure enough, Sunday morning, that teenage girl rode the bus and got saved. The following Sunday, she got off the bus and she said, Brother Ray, my daddy's mad at you. I said, what for? She said, he's mad because you didn't come by yesterday. One Saturday found something to interest him, and the next Saturday he was wondering why I didn't come back to see him. Find something that interests them. Now, I tell my bus captains again, use your archboard cards. Every time you go in a house, or every time you're with one of your riders on Sunday, keep your ears open. And if they mention anything that interests them, write it down on the back of their archboard card. If their name's on the front of the card here, flip it over to the back side and just right there, just write down. Okay, maybe some little kid mentions chocolate's my favorite ice cream. Write down ice cream chocolate on the back of his card. Maybe some little girl mentions my kitty cat's name is Tiger. Or on the back of her card, when you get back in the car and you start to drive away, she's not looking, just flip her card over on the back, write kitty cat Tiger. Maybe one of them will mention, my grandmother lives in Nebraska. Write down grandmother, Nebraska. And when you come back next Saturday, you look at the front, her name's there, you flip over the back, it says grandmother, Nebraska. You walk in the house and you say, hey, heard from your grandmother out in Nebraska this week? How's your grandmother in Nebraska doing? And she's just sitting there thinking, who is this guy? Can't believe he remembers all this. Find something that interests them, that'll make them feel loved. I told my bus captains one Saturday to do this, and one of my bus captains by the name of John Francis went out visiting on his bus route, and that week a little boy mentioned that he liked the Cubs. He said, boy, Cubs are my favorite baseball team. And so a little boy rooted for the Cubs, you know, and so old John got his archboards out that night or that afternoon, and he wrote down the back of that little boy's card, Cubs. So the next Saturday he went by and he asked the boy, he said, hey, heard the Cubs traded a pitcher this week. He said, yeah, sure did. And they talked about that for a few minutes. So we went back the next Saturday. He said, Cubs moved up 2 places in the standings this week, didn't you know, from the basement up to 2 places. And he said, yeah, man, Cubs doing better. Got two places out of the basement, you know. And they talked about that for a while. Then the next week they talked about it again. The next week again. The next week again. After about 7 or 8 weeks of this, finally one Saturday this little boy said, Cubs, 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 Cubs. That's all you talk about is Cubs. He said, don't you ever talk about Jesus or the Bible or heaven or anything? Find something that interests them and talk about it. Use their name, find something that interests them, and make them feel like an individual so they'll feel loved while you make your visit brief. Next point. Still visiting your regulars on Saturday morning, first half of the day. Now don't throw anything at me while I say this. I'm a fundamentalist. I work for Brother Hiles. Or I did until I smarted off this morning. But don't witness to people while you visit your regulars unless you have to. Don't witness to people while you visit your regulars unless you just have to. Now you say, what do you mean just have to? Well, one day 2 of our soul winners were out and knocked on the door, and a lady came to the door, and one of our soul winners said, we'd like to come in and talk to you for a minute. She said, I'm sorry, I'm busy now. He said, but ma'am, we need to talk to you about something important. She said, well, sir, I'm sorry, but I'm doing something important right now. He said, but ma'am, we need to talk to you about something very important. She said, sir, you don't understand. I'm doing something very important. He said, ma'am, let me be blunt with you. We need to talk to you about the most important thing you'll ever do in your entire life. She began to cry, and she said, mister, you don't understand. I'm doing what I feel like is the most important thing I've ever done in my entire life. She said, I'm sitting at the table thumbing through the Bible, and I promised God I wouldn't quit till I found out how to get to heaven. Man, you find one like that, go get them. But unless you have to, don't witness to folks on Saturday morning. Now, just hang on to that, and I'll get back to it in a few minutes, and I'll show you why. Next, don't visit new homes unless you have to. Don't visit new homes yet unless you have to. Right now, you're visiting your regulars. Now, I teach that while you visit your regulars, you ought to look for new people. For example, every house you go into on Saturday, you ought to ask every brother and sister in that house if they'll come. Every Saturday, ask every brother and sister if they'll ride the bus. Ask mom and dad often if they'll ride the bus. Often in your houses on Saturday, you ought to ask them if they know someone else who live in the neighborhood that would come on the bus. I was visiting with the bus captain one Saturday, and we got out of the car and started to the first visit. A little boy was walking down the street. I say a little boy. He was 15, 16 years of age. In Chicago, now I don't know about your area, but in Chicago, we don't talk to children out on the sidewalk who are 15 years of age or under. We don't talk to any children under the age that we think are 15 or under until we see the parents first, just because of the type area we're in. But this boy looked like he was 15, 16 years of age. So I said to the bus captain, you know him? The bus captain said, well, I've seen him around. I said, have you ever spoken to him? He said, no, never have. So I stopped the boy, and I said, I'd like to ride the bus tomorrow. And the little boy agreed to after a few minutes. So we said, okay, let's go talk to your mom. We did. And as we started to leave the house, the bus captain said, okay, see you later. We started to walk away, and I said, wait a minute, we're not through yet. I said to the boy, do you know anybody else that lives in this neighborhood that might want to ride your bus tomorrow, might want to ride the bus tomorrow? He said, you mean I can bring a visitor? I said, sure, you can bring a friend. He said friend. He didn't know the term visitor. He said, can I bring a friend? I said, sure, you can bring a friend. He said, you mean there's room on the bus for my friend? I said, yeah. You know, on this bus there was a lot of room for his friend. I said, yeah, you can bring a friend, plenty of room. He said, okay, let's go. And down the street we went, and down some steps into a basement apartment, knocked on the door, and this boy I was speaking to was bilingual. He spoke Spanish and English, and the boy he was speaking to only spoke Spanish. And so they spoke to each other for a few minutes, you know, and got through talking, and he turned to me, and both of them were smiling, and he said, he's coming tomorrow. I said, great, let's sign him up. And we signed his name up. So we started to leave, and the bus captain said, see both of you tomorrow. I said, wait a minute, we're not through yet. I said, you know anybody else like to ride the bus tomorrow? He said, you mean I'm bringing another friend? In an hour and 15 minutes, we signed up 47 people to ride that bus. Just because we asked, do you know anybody else that lives in this neighborhood, and do you know anybody else, and do you know anybody else? 47 brand new riders in an hour and 15 minutes before we ever visited the first regular that Saturday. So ask folks, do they know of someone else in the neighborhood? So if you find someone that's a hot prospect, go after them right that minute. But otherwise, don't get bogged down knocking on new doors while you're supposed to be visiting your regulars. Save that. We'll get back to it a little bit later. All right? Set up real straight for a minute and look up here, and I want to review with you just for a moment. Okay? You tell me, we're going to divide your day into how many segments of time? 3. Now, you got to say it better than that. How many segments of time we're going to divide your day into? 3. All right, good. 3. And the first segment of the day will occupy one half. You got to do better than that now. Come on, 1 half. If we don't get with it, we're going to be in here all afternoon. All right, now 1 half. I knew you wanted to get rid of me. Okay, 1 half. There in that 1 half, you're supposed to visit your regulars. Say it, your regulars. And while you visit your regulars, you make every visit brief. And while you make every visit brief, you make every person feel loved by treating them like an individual. Good. And you use their name and talk about things that interest them. Okay? Number 2. First segment of the day, 1 half visit your regulars. Number 2. Second segment of the day. This segment of the day is going to occupy 1/4 of your time. 1/4. During this segment of the day, you're going to cover your route systematically. Systematically cover your whole bus route. Now, the next key word there is cover. Systematically cover your whole bus route. Now, let me say this. If you're a new captain, if you're in a new area, if you're starting a new area of your bus route, you're expanding your bus route, anything like that, then what you want to do is exactly what Brother Beebe said yesterday. You want to go into that area and you want to drive around and find the children. Find the houses. It's got the broken windows, the tricycles out front. Follow the school bus home like Brother Beebe said. Make notes of where the children are. Ask people in the neighborhood, are there any children who live here? Are there any children who live next door? Are there any children that live on this block? And scout around this area and find an area where there's lots of children. Go into that area and visit every house where you can tell there's children there, and try to get a large number of people to ride your bus right away. Now, once you do that and you get some folks coming, then it's your obligation to cover that entire bus route systematically, every person on the route. Someday, as bus captain, you'll answer to God for the people who lived on your bus route. Now, God won't only say to you, you know, well done, my faithful servant, and you know, you got so many saved on your bus route. He's also going to say, what about these other folks who lived on the bus route that you never got to? You remember all those Saturday afternoons you went home early from visiting just because you didn't feel good that day, or just because there was a ball game on you wanted to watch? You're going to answer for everybody that lives on your bus route. You need to systematically cover your bus route. I mean, building by building, street by street, person by person, house by house. Make sure you talk to everyone on the bus route. Here's the way I suggest you do it. I suggest you pick one area of your bus route. And on Saturday, plan ahead of time which area you're going to go to today. You finish visiting your regulars. Now the next segment of the day is going to occupy 1/4 of your time. 1/4. The first segment, 1/2. The second segment, 1/4. During this 1/4 of the day, you systematically cover your bus route. So if you're visiting 6 hours on your bus route, you're going to spend 3 hours visiting your regulars. There's not very many bus routes where you could not visit all your regulars in 3 hours if you'll get out there and hustle. Then you're going to spend about an hour and a half looking for brand new people to ride your bus. You're going to pick out an area. You're going to find all the children you can in that area. And then you're going to pick out another area, find all the children you can in that area. And when you've covered your whole bus route that way, scanning over it, stopping at houses where it looks like there's children, and asking them if they know of other children. Then you're going to go back and systematically cover your whole bus route, house by house, building by building, street by street. When I do this, I take a 3x5 card, put it in my shirt pocket with a pen. You ladies can put it in your purse. And when you visit on the bus route, all you do is you knock on the door, you tell them who you are, why you're there, invite them to ride the bus, and whatever answer they give you as you leave the house to go out to the sidewalk, to go to the next house, or to get in your car and drive to the next farmhouse down the road, whichever, you take the 3x5 card out of your pocket as you're walking away from the house. You take your pen and you simply make one little notation on that card that helps you remember what happened at that particular house. Okay, like on our bus routes. I might be on the 2600 block of North Damon in Chicago. So on Saturday morning, I'll take a 3x5 card, I'll write down 2600 North Damon. Then on the left-hand side of the card, I'll write 01, 03, 05, 07, 09, and so forth for the house numbers on that particular block of North Damon. For you, it may be route numbers or something like that, but put down the addresses on the left-hand side over here. As you walk away from the house, you simply pull your card out, pull your pen out. As you're walking, you don't even have to stop to do this. It won't waste any of your time. And beside the address, you just put down a little notation that reminds you what happened at that particular house. You could use any system you wanted to. I'll give you my system and show you what I use when I'm visiting on the bus route. I put down NH, just the letter N and the letter H, NH for not home. Maybe at the first house, they were not home, so as I'm walking away, I just put down NH. That doesn't take me 3 seconds to do that. I put it back in my pocket, and I'm on my way to the next visit. When I get to the next visit, it might be that they say they will come. So I put down WC, will come. WC, will come. Now also, if I find a family that will come tomorrow, always I have some extra archboard cards in my pocket. Right here in my vest pocket, I have them there. You ladies keep in your purse. I don't take the entire archboard to the door with me, but I have some blank cards in my pocket here. And if a child says he's coming tomorrow, then I take that card out, and right there in front of Mom, I fill out the card. It makes Mom feel confident that I'm going to take care of her child. I'm going to know his name, his age, his address. I'm going to know all about him. It makes Mom feel more confident about me caring for her child. Also, it makes Johnny feel like a part of the bus route before he ever gets on the bus the first time. Did you ever move to a new school in the middle of the school year, and you had to go to class for the first time that morning, and all the other kids in the classroom all knew each other, but you didn't know any of them, and none of them knew you? And you walked in the door of that classroom that morning, and the teacher said, "Everything's going to be okay," and you thought, "Yeah, sure. I'll never get out of here alive. Some of these guys are going to mug me probably before I get out of this place today." And little Johnny doesn't want to get on that bus tomorrow and be the stranger. So you make him feel like a member of the team, a member of the club, a member of the bus route before he ever gets on the bus by signing him up on Saturday. So get all the information about him right there in the house on Saturday. Take that archboard card home with you. That night, take the archboard card and put it on your archboard at the specific location where it should be so that you'll know to pick that kid up tomorrow morning. You won't forget anybody. The worst thing a bus captain can do is promise a child something and not fulfill that promise. You say, "Well, man, I signed up 20 new kids today and I only forgot one of them." But that one is an individual. And all he knows is you forgot him and you're a liar. And he's not important anymore, and he doesn't matter, and he doesn't count. And you didn't need him because you had 19 others. So you put it on that archboard card that night, on that archboard, and so you'll know to go by there on Sunday morning. You won't forget anyone, okay? But going on with my system, NH, not home, WC, will come, NI, not interested. I put down NI for not interested. CB, no, that's not my CB good buddy, but that's my come back later. CB means come back to me. And beside the little CB, I always write down the time that I promised him I'd come back. You know, you visit in a house on Saturday, and maybe Johnny says he wants to come, and Mom says she'd love to let him come, but Daddy's at work, and we've got to ask Daddy about this. And Daddy will be home at 5:30 this afternoon, so you say, "All right, I'll come back at 5:30 this afternoon." You say, "Well, Brother Ray, can't I just go by Sunday morning and see if they're coming or not?" I was visiting on my bus route one Saturday when I was a captain, and I met a little boy and talked to his mother, and tried to find out if he would come or not. The mother didn't speak a word of English. And so I had to go upstairs and get a teenage girl to come downstairs to interpret for me. The teenage girl that lived upstairs, her name was America. Now, of all names, that was her name, America. So I went upstairs and got America, and I brought America downstairs. You ought to try bringing America downstairs sometime. But I went up there and got America and brought her downstairs, and America interpreted for me. I talked to the mom, and I told the mom that the little boy, his name was Junior, about 4 years old. I said, Junior can ride the bus tomorrow, come to Sunday school, got a special class for him. And she said, boy, love for him to come. Nobody's ever shown any interest in him before. Be glad to let him go, but his daddy doesn't get home from work until sometime later this evening. So I said, all right, you ask his daddy if he can come on the bus in the morning, and my bus already comes down this street tomorrow morning anyway, and so I'll come down here and I'll knock on the door in the morning and see if daddy said yes. And so that was that, and I left. That evening, I finished visiting my bus route. It was, I think 8:30 or 9 o'clock that Saturday evening, and I'd finished visiting my bus route. I started back to the car. The Holy Spirit said to me, go visit the Barrera family. I said, but Lord, I told them I'd be there in the morning. The Holy Spirit said, go visit the Barrera family. I mean, the Holy Spirit spoke to me, not in an audible voice. He only speaks to Oral Roberts that way, but he spoke to me. And I said, but if I go back there tonight, I might appear to be pushy and, offend them, and then maybe they won't let him come. And the Holy Spirit said, go back there tonight. So I went back. I knocked on the door. Mom came to the door. Dad had already came in from work, ate supper, left, and gone back to work at a second shift at a different job. So there was nobody in the house that spoke any English, so I went back upstairs, got America, brought her back downstairs, and the mother said, through America, my husband said he'd be glad to let Junior ride the bus tomorrow, and he appreciates your interest in him, but we were wondering if there was any possibility that just this first time, since Junior's never been before, if there was any chance I could go with him this one time. Oh, man, I felt about that big. I forgot to invite Mom. I said, well, of course, love to have you come. I said, we have special classes just for adults. She said, special classes for adults. I said, in fact, we have special Spanish classes for adults. We have classes where they'll teach in Spanish, preach in Spanish, and now she was really excited. So Sunday morning I pulled up. Little Junior come running out of the house, and right behind him came his sister. I didn't even know he had a sister. She come running out of the house. Mom came out of the house carrying a little baby, and right behind Mom came Dad. Blue suit, pinstripe, tie, shirt. Got on the bus, didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a word of Spanish. All the way to church, I was preaching, singing, leading the program, and he was saying, see. I could have been saying Spanish folks stink. I could have been saying I hate Spanish people. He didn't know. He just, see, and all the way to church. What I didn't know that day, but I found out later, was that morning in the Spanish service, Mr. Barrera walked the aisle. He got saved while Louis Oliveri, our Spanish pastor back then, was preaching. When he got up off his knees, he said, now what am I supposed to do? And Brother Oliveri said, you're supposed to get baptized. He said, okay, when can I do that? He said, just a few minutes, we're going to have a service here and baptize folks. You can get baptized. He said, well, what else am I supposed to do? He said, well, do you know anybody else that's lost? Maybe you need to get them saved. He said, how about my wife? Can she get saved? He said, sure can. He said, I'll go get her. He went and got her, brought her down the aisle. His wife got saved. So then he said, now what am I supposed to do? Brother Louis said, do you know anybody else that's not saved? He said, yeah, a lot of folks in my neighborhood, a lot of relatives, they're not saved. He said, then tell them how to get saved. He said, I don't know how to tell them how to get saved. Brother Louis Oliveri handed him a Spanish Romans Road tract, said, here, take this and show them how to get saved. The next Sunday morning, when I pulled up in front of their house, Junior came out, sister came out, Mom came out holding the baby, Dad came out behind him, and behind Dad came 8 of the 13 adult relatives he had won to Christ that week. And all 8 of those adult relatives he had won to Christ that week walked the aisle in our Spanish church and got baptized at our church the next Sunday. All because I went back that Saturday night. So you promise those kids you'll come back, but if you do, you write down what time you're coming, and you be there and go by on Saturday night. Then the last one I put down is sometimes I'll put an NW for next week. They're not coming tomorrow, but they said come back next week and we might come. Now, during this segment of the day, the first segment of the day, your visits were supposed to be brief. During this segment of the day, you want to make every visit, and here's your next key word, make every visit count. Make every visit count. When you go to that door, The first time you go through your bus route, you go there and you try to get everybody in that house to ride the bus with you and make that visit count. Don't be in a hurry. Stay there as long as you need to. Do it the way Brother Beebe showed you yesterday about shaking your head and telling them all the things about the church, and get them to come and make that visit count. Then the second time you go back through an area to visit again to try to get more people to come, now you want to try to witness to everybody on your bus route. Now you see what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to stay on the same route year after year after year after year after year to accomplish what you need to accomplish on the bus route. It's going to take you several months just to go through that bus route, picking out the houses that have all the kids in them, getting those folks on the buses. Well, then you're going to go back through the same area and re-knock on the same doors again. This time, when you knock on the door, they come to the door and they say, "Weren't you here a few months ago? Didn't we tell you we didn't want you to ride that bus?" And you cut them off right there. Don't let them talk about the bus. You're not here to talk about the bus. You're here to witness to them. And you do some soul winning and try to witness to them and try to get them saved. And then when you finish trying to get them saved, then you invite them to ride the bus. But make that visit count. Accomplish all you can during this time of the day. Make every visit count. It doesn't matter if you make 20 visits or if you make 50 visits or if you make 5 visits. If you make every visit count, you'll accomplish what you need to during this 1/4 of your day, about an hour and a half if you visit 6 hours. Okay, let's review quickly before we go to the last segment. You're going to divide your day into how many segments of time? 3, all right? During the first segment of the day, you're going to occupy 1/2. During that 1/2, you're going to visit your regulars. And while you visit your regulars, you make every person feel loved, okay? And you make your visits brief, okay? And then the way you make people feel loved is by treating them like an individual, by using their name and talking about things that interest them, okay? During the second segment of the day, it's going to occupy 1/4. Say it, 1/4. And during that 1/4 of the day, you systematically cover your bus route, all right? Use that word. You systematically cover your bus route, and while you cover your bus route, you make every visit count. Now, I've got about 12 minutes. Let me give you, probably in less than 12 minutes, what you do during the last segment of the day. Of course, you've already figured out it's 1/4 of your day is left now. You occupied 1/2 and 1/4, you got 1/4 left. Someone says, "Well, Brother Ray, what in the world do I do now? I've already visited my regulars. I've already signed up some brand new people to ride the bus. I've already gone soul winning. What's there left to do on the bus route? I've done all that you do on the bus route. What do I do with this other 1/4 of the day?" You're not finished yet. Now you visit what I call your callbacks. Visit your callbacks. Now you say, what are callbacks? Okay, write it down if you're taking notes, and I'll tell you what callbacks are. First, let me make this statement. Several years ago in Hammond, I started this. A couple of my bus captains and I worked this system out. And then I got up and taught it to all the bus captains. At our church, every route we had who was not already doing something like this that I call the callbacks increased their attendance by 40% or more in 6 weeks' time when they started doing this. Every single captain we had who started doing what I'm about to say to you increased his attendance in 6 weeks' time 40% or more. We kept records, and every one of them did 40% or more. Many doubled the route, many tripled the route. Now, what are your callbacks, okay? I have your callbacks divided into 3 groups. The first group of callbacks, now what this means is you're going to go back to their house and call on them again. You've already been there once that day. You're going to go back again later in the day and call on them a second time. Okay? Who are you going to call on the second time? Who are your callbacks? The first group of callbacks are your regulars that were not home Saturday morning. Your regulars that were not home Saturday morning. So while you visit Saturday morning, you want to keep up with who was not home. You want to make some little mark beside their name as you visit to keep up with who was not home Saturday morning. Then Saturday night, you go back by their house again. You say, well, Brother Ray, can't we just hang one of those little things on the door that just, little printed up thing that just says, sorry, missed you, see you later? Look, a visit's better than a letter. A personal visit is much more effective than a letter. You remember the story about the fellow that was going to the war? And just before he left to go to the war, he went by the house of his fiancée, and he said to her, now, I've got to leave and be going to the war. Probably be gone a couple of years. And I want you to promise me that you'll wait till I get back from the war to get married, and I'll write you every day while I'm gone. She said, I promise you I won't get married till you get home. He said, I promise you I'll write you every day. And sure enough, he fulfilled his promise. Every day for 2 years while he was gone, the postman delivered a letter. Every day while he was gone, postman delivered that letter for 2 straight years. 2 weeks after he got home from the army, she got married to the postman. A visit's more effective than a letter. You go back by there on Saturday night, knock on the door, and here's what they're going to say. They're going to say, "What are you doing here this time of the day?" Because you normally go by at 9 o'clock in the morning. And they think all you do is drive from your house, drive to their house, knock on their door, ask them if they're going to ride the bus, and drive back home. That's all they realize. They don't realize you're out there 4, 5, 6 hours a day. They think you come make one visit. And that's what I want them to think. I want them to think they're important enough that you come by and see them every Saturday. And they're going to say, "What are you doing here this time of the day?" And I always take advantage of that. I always say, "Billy, you know I love you. And, man, I just couldn't leave without seeing you. Billy, when I got through visiting the whole bus route, I realized I hadn't seen you yet, and I couldn't go home until I came by and found you here. I want you to know I love you." And all of a sudden, you ever had kids ask you how much you get paid for doing this? Yeah, you've all heard that question. How much they pay you to do this? All of a sudden, it dawns on Billy, this guy's not doing this because it's his job. He's doing it because he loves me. Then, you sign him up and get him ready to ride the bus the next day. Your second group of callbacks. First group are the regulars who were not home that morning. The second group of callbacks are the parents that are not saved yet. Parents that are not saved. Parents you want to witness to on Saturday afternoon or evening. First of all, you'll have a better chance of winning mom or dad to Christ if you'll wait and witness to them later in the day. When you go by that morning, it might be that Monday night you got your archboard out and you flipped through it and you came across Mrs. Jones, and you thought, you know, I haven't witnessed to Mrs. Jones yet. Lord, please help me win Mrs. Jones to Christ this Saturday. And all week long you prayed for Mrs. Jones. And when you go there on Saturday morning, your heart's just burning inside of you for Mrs. Jones to get saved. So you ask, "Can the children ride the bus?" Mrs. Jones says, "Yes." And then you say, "Now, Mrs. Jones, I want to talk to you." And, in so many words, you lead into the salvation, witnessing to her. And in so many words, you say, "Now, Mrs. Jones, I want to talk to you about your salvation." Even though you've been praying all week long to Mrs. Jones, it seems like it was a spur-of-the-moment thing. It seems like, oh, yeah, he came here to see my kids, and since he was here anyway, he happened to think of me for a moment. If you'll wait and go by Saturday night, I guarantee you here's what's going to happen. Mrs. Jones is going to come to the door, and you're going to say, "Hello there," and she's going to say, "What are you doing here? Didn't you already come by one time this morning? I told you Johnny could ride the bus. What are you doing here?" And you take advantage of it and say, "I didn't come by to talk to Johnny. I came by to talk to you." And all of a sudden, Mrs. Jones knows she's an important individual to you. She matters to you. She's not just the mother of those kids who ride the bus. She's an individual. You'll have a lot better chance of winning her to Christ that way than you would if you'd have tried that morning. Plus, if you witness to her that morning, and suppose she doesn't get saved. Occasionally you witness to someone, and because they're under conviction, they're not mad at you, they don't dislike you, but because they feel uncomfortable, and you're the one who brought that uncomfortable feeling there, they don't want to go through that again. They're trying to get rid of you. They didn't get saved, they want to get you out of the house. They're not mad at you, they still love you, but they don't want to go through that uncomfortable feeling anymore. So, while they're feeling that way, you make the mistake of saying, "Oh, by the way, can Johnny still ride the bus tomorrow?" And to get rid of you, during her uncomfortable moment, she says, "No. In fact, we've decided Johnny's not ever going to ride your bus anymore." So you lose Johnny. But if you go by Saturday night, first of all, you got a better chance of winning Mom to Christ. Second, if you don't win Mom to Christ, you won't lose Johnny. Because when you start out the door, you don't have to say, "Can Johnny ride the bus tomorrow?" Because you've already taken care of that morning. So as you go out the door, you just simply say, "See you in the morning, Johnny." You win more moms and dads to Christ, and you lose less children that way. So go back that night and witness to parents. And then number 3, the third group of callbacks, are those people who have special problems on your bus route. Those people who have special problems. You're going to run across all kind of problems on your bus route, and praise God for it. If there weren't problems out there, there would be no need for you. You wouldn't be needed if there wasn't problems on that bus route. So praise God for it. You're going to run across problems. But if you spend all of your time Saturday morning trying to take care of each family's problems, you're not going to get your bus route visited. And that's what happens to a lot of good bus captains. You go out there 2 or 3 hours to visit, and you spend 30 or 45 minutes with each family the first 4 or 5 visits, and you don't finish visiting your bus route that day. Suppose you got a teenage boy on your bus route, and he comes and gets saved and gets him a haircut, puts a tie on like every young man ought to, and he goes to church and starts wearing maybe some slacks of some kind, and carries his Bible to church, maybe surrenders to preach. One Sunday you go by to pick him up, and he forgot his Bible. The next Sunday you go by to pick him up, he couldn't find his tie. The next Sunday you go by to pick him up, and he's got those ragged pants and tennis shoes on again like he used to wear to church. The next Sunday you go by and you notice he needs a haircut real bad. You're about to lose that boy. He's just about gone. So you go by on Saturday night and you say, "Hey, Joe, I'm all through visiting my bus route, but I'm starving to death. Man, I'm going to go down to McDonald's and get me what some of you got a little while ago, a cheese quarter pounder and a big large order of fries and a chocolate milkshake and a fried apple pie. And, hey, Joe, would you like to go with me? Will I get a bite to eat at McDonald's?" Well, sure, Joe wants to go. I don't care if he just got through eating supper. He wants to go. And so you and Joe go down to McDonald's. You buy Joe a hamburger. You sit across the table from him. You get about 2/3 of your hamburger eaten, and you stop. You push your hamburger off to the side, and you say, "Now, Joe, let me tell you why I really asked you to come with me. Joe, let's not fool around with each other. We both know what's going on. Joe, I noticed recently you quit bringing your Bible to church, and your hair got a little longer, and you couldn't find your tie a few times recently. And maybe with a lump in your throat and a tear in your eye, you say, Joe, if you don't turn out right, buddy, I think I'll just die. Joe, I don't know if I could live with myself if you didn't turn out right and serve God. Joe, you just got to turn out right. Joe, I love you and I care about you and I want what's best for you, buddy. You'll get old Joe back. I guarantee you will. So you wait till Saturday night when you're through with everything else and then help the families on your bus route that have problems. Okay? Let's review one last time real quick. You're going to divide your day into how many segments of time? 3. All right? When you divide the day into 3 segments, the first segment occupies 1/2. During that 1/2, you visit your regulars. While you visit your regulars, you make every visit brief. While you make every visit brief, you make every person feel loved. And while you make every person feel loved, you do that by treating them like an individual. During the second segment of the day, it occupies 1/4. During that 1/4 of the day, you systematically cover your bus route by getting a lot of riders in the beginning and then going back through and witnessing and so forth and making sure you cover every single house, even the ones that weren't home the week before. You go back by and see them the next week. Cover it systematically. Work out a system that'll work for you. Okay? During that 1/4 of the day, while you're covering your bus route, you make every visit count. Then during the last segment of the day, which of course occupies 1/4, you visit your callbacks. Say it. Visit your callbacks. And those callbacks are your regulars that were not home that morning and the parents you need to witness to and the families that have problems. All right. And if you'll use that system, I guarantee you, you can increase the attendance on your bus route dramatically in a matter of just a few weeks, and you'll see it grow, and you'll see folks saved, and you'll see God bless your bus route in a mighty way. All right, our time is up. Is Brother B.D.